Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. I'm glad to have you with me today. And today I've got a very special guest. Her name is Liz Shuler, and she is a transformational coach, yoga therapist, Reiki master, and perhaps most importantly, a geek. Liz, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, glad to have you with me today. So, Liz, would you like to start off and um, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Mhm.
what made you interested in becoming a transformational coach?
Yeah, so I started out as a psychotherapist, actually. I have been doing therapy since 2014, and before that, I was even working with youth in residential treatment centers. And I noticed that there were a lot of gaps in sort of the medical model of things. So I started looking for more holistic approaches to mental health, to physical health, to well being. I myself suffer from some autoimmune issues. And so, in experimenting with what works for me, I found some really awesome things that will work for a lot of other people. And I wanted to share that with them. So, I'm moving into transformational coaching. I've been kind of doing a little bit of both for the last 8 years or so. And now I'm diving fully into the deep end. And I'm also doing psychedelic integration coaching now.
Ooh, can you give some insight on what that is?
Right. So, psychedelics have been studied since the 70s for their beneficial effect on not just our mind, but also our body. But then the war on drugs happened, all of the testing kind of got shut down. But there's been sort of a renaissance now. And all of the research has been really, really promising on how beneficial psychedelics can be for helping with your mental health, with autoimmune issues, with a lot of different things, mind and body. And because of this renaissance, I think a lot of people have started, taking recreationally or trying to take psychedelics therapeutically, but not really feeling prepared to do so and not understanding what that looks like. So I am there to help prepare people for those experiences and then to help them integrate and process afterwards so that it's not just, well, I had this really trippy experience and now what?
Okay. So, like, how does this work exactly? Like, when someone is having an issue, they come to you for help. Um, like, how does the process work?
So it depends a lot on the person. So some of my clients have been doing psychedelics like, recreationally for a long time. And now that they're hearing about how helpful it can be, they want to try and use it therapeutically. And so it's a different mindset, right? When you come from it therapeutically and recreationally. So I help them get into a set and setting or a mindset and have a good environment for their therapeutic trip, and then they have either a trip sitter or somebody that they do it with, because legally I can't provide psychedelics and I can't be with them while they're ingesting the psychedelics. But there are people who will do that, and there are, services for that. And then afterward, we talk about what they experienced. I help them make meaning. I help them figure out what changes in lifestyle they might want to make or what insights they've had, and give them some practices so that they can keep that benefit. So it's not just a one-time thing.
What what kind of things do they experience?
Oh, it's it depends on your substance a lot, and it depends on the person, and it depends on your environment, so your mindset, and where you're at in your life and where you're at when you're having your trip. I think most people would consider like mystical experiences would be something that is common among people who take psychedelics therapeutically. Ego death, when you take really high doses, is a huge experience that can be really, really scary and really hard to process. And so, yeah, I mean, you can also have, bodily sensations that come up, anxiety. A lot of people see entities or spirits or guides. There's a lot of different things that can happen during a trip.
Is this sort of like just having a daydream? I guess is that one way to describe
It's
it?
it's a lot more than that. So when you take a psychedelic, it what it does is it takes away the inhibitions in your brain and it works on the serotonin receptors in your brain. So you can have hallucinations, so you can see the walls moving maybe. Some people, like I know my dad, who's an old hippie, used to talk about when he took LSD that the TV would melt in front of him, right? Some people leave the room that they're in altogether and go off into, another dimension. It's a whole huge experience that's different than most anything else, unless you've done like a lot of meditation.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some people see like spirits or entities,
Mhm.
like what kind of entities are you talking about here?
Yeah,
Like
it
demons
could
or
be.
something, or
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything from, I know I haven't personally done ayahuasca, but for a lot of people who have done ayahuasca ceremonies, Mother Ayahuasca is an entity that they encounter quite often. And it's just a spirit of the plant that comes and talks to them about what it is that they need to do, what they need to change, what's going on in their lives. Some people see, past people who have passed, people who were important to them, and they talk to them. For the most part, we think that it's probably some sort of link into memory in the brain or something like that. But for a lot of people, it's a spiritual experience that, science can't explain it right now. So whatever it is for them, if it's meaningful, that's what we want to look at and talk about and process.
okay, that that sounds like it'd be quite a wild experience.
It can, yeah, it can, and it can be scary. It can be really scary when you I mean, when you're doing it recreationally, things can go wrong, but you're usually in a very, upbeat environment, maybe like at a festival where you're doing something, that's positive and you're trying to get high and have fun. In a therapeutic environment, a lot of times people are trying to figure something out, right? There's something that's inside of them that they feel like isn't where they want it to be. And so tapping into a lot of those things can be really scary and really hard, and figuring out how to deal with whatever happened in that trip afterwards can be difficult.
Have you ever seen someone go through like a really big change from doing this? Like they come to you and they have all these issues. They're like maybe they're miserable or something, and then they go through this experience, and then like they're a completely different person afterwards.
I wouldn't say they're a completely different person. I think I've seen huge perspective changes from people. So they come in thinking about the world, thinking about themselves and people around them in one way, and they come out with a completely different perspective. A lot of people come out feeling more connected and understanding that they are part of this world and we are all sort of one world in a way. We're all connected, kind of like tree roots are connected. And that perspective really changes how they function in their life. But again, that is fine and great coming out of the experience. But then if you don't do anything to kind of keep that going and foster that and promote that in your life, then it just becomes a one time thing. And in a few weeks, you might revert back to, your old life and your old habits and things that happen.
I I think a lot of people might be better off if they go a more holistic route when they,
Yeah.
as opposed to like the big pharmacy thing. Um, so you don't live in the United States, you live in Belgium.
Yeah.
How are things over there compared to here as far as like the medical field, I guess?
It's kind of similar. So I've worked in schools internationally, and it's very interesting how America has kind of exported a lot of stuff to the rest of the world, right? Um, Here in Belgium, healthcare is a lot cheaper. There's a lot more safety net, but it's still very, you go to the doctor, you get your diagnosis. A lot of times you get a pill, right? There's not a lot of holistic health that's in the medical model of things that, insurance would cover, stuff like that. So while I think Europe has this great safety net for people, it's still couched in this medical model that doesn't have a lot of that alternative holistic, the ideas that are really coming out of places like the United States with movements against the medical model. So there's less of that I've seen here, but it's growing.
Yeah, I recently heard a statistic, and I haven't looked into it, so I don't know if it's true or not. But if it is, it's pretty crazy. That the United States is one of only four countries in the world that advertises for, like, the big pharmaceutical companies.
Yep.
That's pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very jarring to move to a different country and all of a sudden you don't see the little Zoloft bubble commercials anymore, right? I, yeah, it's crazy. There are very few people here that will go to a doctor and say, I need this pill, right? Doctors are still going to probably prescribe you something for your depression or um, your blood pressure or whatever, but it's more likely that the doctor is telling you that you need it than you are to go in and say, hey, I need a pill. I need this pill. I need Zoloft. I need Prozac, right?
Yeah, so you don't turn on the TV and you see these drug commercials and they tell you all these wonderful things, and at the end it's like a minute of a guy talking really fast with all these horrible side effects.
Yeah, no, no. Thankfully, that's not a thing in most of the
Good,
rest of the world. Yeah.
good, good. Liz, what is a Reiki master?
So Reiki is a universal energy, and the person who came up with it was a master in Japan, Usui, and he felt that he could tap into this universal healing energy. And for me, I know that there are a lot of different traditions and a lot of ways of thinking about Reiki that are very much couched in this tradition. But for me, Reiki means any sort of healing energy or connection that you have with somebody else that lends to a positive outcome. So for a lot of people, for Reiki, you would lie down on a table, somebody would either put their hands on you or over you, and you would have a Reiki session that way. They do it a lot actually in hospitals now. Nurses do a lot of Reiki because it's been shown to be really helpful for pain management. So people who do Reiki after surgeries or things like that use a lot less painkillers than people who don't. But for me, the way that I use it is in my sessions, my one on one sessions. I just sort of try and have that energy of love and healing ready and waiting for people. And if they need it, they can take it. And if they don't need it, then it's still there and surrounding us and hopefully doing some good.
So is it like a energy transference kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah. There are a lot of different like energy healing methodologies that have come up in the last 20-25 years, I think. For a lot of them, they sort of say that you use your own energy, whereas Reiki says that you're channeling energy from the world around you, right? Which I like better because then I'm not having to give you my energy for you to be okay, right? And we can all channel this energy and help each other, and we don't have to deplete ourselves or make our cups empty so that somebody else can be okay, which I don't think is a healthy way to do things.
Right. Now, is this something that has to be like you have to physically be with a person? Like you couldn't like start transferring energy to me right now, for example.
Yeah, I mean, distance Reiki is a thing. And there have been some clients, I do work primarily online at the moment, and there have been some clients where that's been really helpful for them. Um, I don't do it very often over distance, so it's probably not going to be as effective if we tried it right now. It's very effective in person because we have these connections, these mirror neurons in our brains, right, where we connect to other people and we mirror what they're doing and we have that empathy. And so if you can really tap into that feeling of being loving and supporting and have that safe energy, that is really helpful for people in person, even if it's not, I'm not putting my hands on them and healing their specific whatever it is, right?
Now, if you're going to be transferring your energy to someone,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have like a lot of positive energy, And so that means, I guess, you yourself would have to be like in a really, really good mental state in order to do that. So, like, what do you do for yourself to for your own mental health to make sure you're always in a good mental condition?
Yeah, it's really important as any sort of healer, right? To be able to do your own work. Like, I'm not perfect. I have bad days and I have
We all
struggle.
do, yeah.
Yeah, but I try and really focus on when I'm with a client, making sure that I'm okay in that moment and that I feel safe and that I feel centered and present so that I'm not triggering in them that feeling of, are things not safe, right? We all know the feeling of like walking into a room and all of a sudden we're tense because the whole room is tense, right? We're like, oh no, something has happened here, right? And you don't want that in the room with you when you're healing. So I do a lot of yoga. I mean, you can see there's a yoga mat behind me. It's something that I do quite often. I meditate quite often. I write. So I write poetry and some fiction therapeutically for myself. I play video games. I play TTRPGs. I watch, a lot of fantasy, read a lot of fantasy novels, just anything that can help me stay centered and positive and in a good place.
Now, does Reiki, does that always have to be a one-on-one thing, or can like multiple people join up to try and heal someone?
Yeah, there are a couple of, I know on Facebook, a couple of groups that do like World Reiki Day and they just send Reiki. Everybody sends Reiki on one day for, helping heal the world. Um, or there are groups where multiple people can send Reiki to a person who asks for it, things like that. I don't know when that happens. It could get, a little chaotic. And I'm not sure if it's more helpful to have more people doing it or one on one, but you could do it that way.
Okay. Now, you talked about psychedelics, the ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
the spirit, like the plant spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, does anyone ever encounter like any like evil entities, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's another reason that it's important to have good preparation because sometimes, I mean, I wouldn't characterize them as evil necessarily. I think some people have had experiences where they felt like there was an evil, spirit or entity with them. Um, but what we try and do is for any experience that comes up in the psychedelic, when the trip, we want to leave the door open and let yourself move through it because in most cases, even if it's something that seems evil or that seems bad, it could be a part of yourself that you think is evil or you think is bad, but it isn't, right? It's just a part of who you are. We all have things about ourselves that aren't perfect. We all have flaws. And if we push that away, it becomes stronger and it becomes a part of us that is shameful. And that doesn't help anybody heal or move forward. So we want people to be able to have enough tools to say, okay, this seems evil, but I know that I'm having a trip right now, and I know that this was something that we talked about could happen. I'm going to do some breath work and see if I can, just be with this, whatever this evil thing is right now, and see what happens. And hopefully they can take some tools and move through that and get whatever insight or experience they needed from that moment.
Is there any crossover between the psychedelics and Reiki? Like, do you usually use them at the same time with the client, or are they completely different things?
Yeah. So I'm a Reiki master. I'm also a yoga therapist, a breath work, and mindfulness instructor. So I use a lot of those somatic techniques, not only to prepare people so that if they get into something that, is scary or is difficult, that they can move through that in the trip. But then we also use that afterwards to help really integrate and understand and create meaning from their experience. So we know from a lot of psychological experiments that when you use your body to integrate things rather than just your mind, it sticks around a lot longer. because you're using your entire nervous system. And so it helps change those pathways in your brain. So it's easier to create new habits, it's easier to create new perceptions that way. And that's what psychedelics do. They open that door in your brain for all of those new pathways to be made, and then you just have to do the work of making them. So Reiki can be part of that if that's something that after the trip somebody is feeling really anxious or really upset. We might sit and do some breath work, and then I might ask, hey, would you like me to give you some Reiki energy to help calm you down? And if they say yes, then that's something that we can do. It's not necessarily something that they're going to take with them and use in their everyday life necessarily. There are other tools like yoga and breath work for that, but it can be really helpful for, being calm and peaceful and really lowering that feeling of stress or anxiety.
Is Reiki a joint effort? Like, does the person receiving energy have to do anything?
Sometimes, I mean, it depends on like your tradition. I think a lot of people have a tradition wherein the person lays there, you do the Reiki, you do all of the intuiting and whatever. The way that I like to do Reiki is a lot more interactive. So if I am feeling something from you, I might say, oh, I'm getting this feeling like this really tightness in my stomach. Is that something that resonates with you? And then they'll, talk and tell me maybe a little bit about what that means for them. And then we move on to something else. But that's, for me, I like it to be an interactive experience because, again, if I'm just giving you the Reiki, there's less integration for what's happening. You're not processing it, you're just letting it happen to you. And that doesn't help with the lasting benefits. So, from my point of view, I like it to be interactive. I like it to be something that we do together. But that's not to say that if somebody gives you Reiki, that it won't be effective just because it's a one-way street.
Okay. Liz, what are some of your favorite video games?
Oh man, Skyrim has probably been my most favorite game. I've gotten lately into like the Planet Crafter and Valheim. So I kind of like survival games, but I also like the RPG elements of those.
All-time favorite game?
Oh, that one's hard. Oh, I have a really soft spot for Thief. I don't know if you've the
I've
like
heard
the
of it, but I never
original.
played it.
Yeah, it was one of the first video games I ever played on the computer, and yeah, so it's got a soft spot in my heart, stealing things and being sneaky.
Of course, you can do that in like the Skyrim too. You can be a thief and you can steal
Yeah,
pretty much
thief and
anything in those
assassin.
games.
Yep.
See, I was always more partial to Oblivion than
Oh man.
Skyrim because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean Oblivion had that really epic beginning with Patrick Stewart as the king, and you're running through the underground tunnels trying to protect him, and I just thought it was a cool game. And I didn't
Yeah.
get into Skyrim too much, but I mean, just in general, those are pretty fun games, I think.
Yeah. The crafting and like the alchemy in Oblivion was better than Skyrim.
And didn't Oblivion also have like more character options too, as far as like skills you can learn?
Yeah, I think there was a bigger tree. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Have you been playing games since you were a kid?
Yeah, I'm gonna date myself here, but I, when computer games first came out, my dad was kind of one of those people who was like, "We're gonna get a computer and we're gonna start learning to use it." And then the internet came out, and he was like, "We're gonna do this because I know that you're gonna have to need it." And he was right, so that's great. So yeah, I remember playing like the paddle game on the green and black screen when that first came out in like 90s sometime, and I was just a little kid. So it's kind of always been part of my life.
Very cool. Are you a fan of Stardew Valley at all? Like those type of games?
Yeah, no, I've never. I don't know. It's just the farming is something that I did. I did a little bit of like farming and ranching, and taking care of horses and things in my real life. So I was like, I don't really need that in my my gaming life. I would rather run around and I don't know, solve puzzles and kill people and be an assassin, I guess.
Completely understandable.
Yep.
And Liz, you also mentioned that you enjoy playing TTRPGs as well. What's
Yeah.
your experience like with those?
So when I moved overseas, I started working as an international school counselor, and I ended up making a lot of friends with other people who were into TTRPGs, and I didn't have a lot of experience up until then. I played a lot of board games, but not a lot of like D&D or anything like that. And people were like, "Well, we want to get a game together, but we don't have anybody to GM." And I was like, "Well, I might be able to do that." So we got together a dungeon world game, which is different than D&D in that the GM is there to kind of set the scene and help everything go forward, but the characters and the players have a lot more input on the story and they can change things, and it's a lot more improv based. So I was the GM for my group first in Jordan and then in China, and I haven't found a group yet in Belgium, but I'll probably get there.
Now, do you prefer to be a GM as opposed to being a player?
I really like being a GM. Like I said, I like writing. So writing up a story and having like a plot twist and you know getting all of those little puzzles right and making those things, I really enjoy it. So I would rather GM, I think, than play.
Have you ever had anything like really crazy or strange happen in your games?
All the time. Um, yeah, I because it's so player led, right? You have a certain amount of stuff prepared, and then yeah, it can all go out the window in like a moment. I had one campaign where I had this idea that we were going to be, you know, playing sort of like this medieval regular RPG, you know, sort of thing. And then at some point they would go down a tunnel and they would be in this upside down world. And so we started out the game and they were in this, you know, just medieval village. And I had my first sort of like hook, this idea that maybe there was something more going on. And I had somebody steal something from one of the players and drop down into the sewers. And then instead of like just being like, oh, well, one of my players was like, I'm going after him. And it just jumped out. And all of a sudden they were in the other world that I wasn't expecting them to be in until, you know, at least the third or fourth game. And so I had to like scramble and figure out what I was doing. And yeah, lots of twists and turns that happen.
Is Dungeon World a kind of a similar setting to D&D as far as like there's elves and dwarves and
It
wizards?
it can be anything you want, really. So there are people who play, you know, very D&D like. Um, when I play with my friends, usually we do something similar to that, just because that's the kind of setting that they like. But there's also we've done games where you know they've made up their own race, and you know they get to play that race, or there's a whole you know alien issue. You know, it just depends on where your players want to go.
How long do your gaming sessions usually last?
Oh, we would usually do like a Saturday, and people would come over around 11 or noon, and then we'd play, and then we'd have dinner, and we might play a little bit more. So sometimes it would be, you know, 4 or 5 hours. Sometimes it would be like 9 hours. It just depended on how long people wanted to go.
It sounds like a lot of fun. When I played Dungeons and Dragons, we usually got together on a Sunday for like 6-ish hours at a time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that was a long time ago. I miss those days. That
Yeah.
was that was always a lot of fun. Um, and like you yourself, have you ever done any like had any funny mistakes that you made during a game? Um, Something that everyone kind of laughs at, but in the moment it's like, oh my gosh.
So I am not a voice actor. So as the GM, I still have to play all of the characters, like the NPCs. And there will be times when I try and do a voice, and people are just like, "Oh, Liz, no, please just don't. Just, let's just stop that right now." So yeah, I mean, you can try as much as you want, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Um, but yeah,
I think it's always more fun when the GM does voices, and it's more immersive, even if the voice is a little cringy at times.
yeah.
You mentioned that you've had gaming groups in Jordan and China.
Hmm.
Um, are Do you play the same type of games there in like both countries?
Yeah, but there, because it is, again, because Dungeon World is so much about the players, it becomes a completely different game depending on who you're playing with, right? Um, so in Jordan, we had a lot of people who had played a lot of D&D, and so it really was like pretty standard D&D stuff with, some other stuff thrown in that's weird and crazy. When I moved to China, there the people that I played with hadn't done any D&D or any sort of TTRPGs, and they were just like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And they ended up really enjoying it. But that became something that was much different than the regular D&D sort of setting. Like we did one setting where they were in like a water world, and there weren't like other races really other than underwater races. So it was all humans and then underwater people.
So what's the deal with Belgium? Is there just like a lack of geeks over there for you to play with?
No, I think I just, when we got here, I was setting up my business, and in Belgium, the bureaucracy is famous here. And so it took, quite a few months to get everything set up. And then there's also a lot of stuff that you have to do as an immigrant, like taking a lot of language courses and integration courses and doing all of that. So I've just been a lot more busy than normal and haven't been out and about as much. We go to a game cafe here every once in a while, but we just haven't had time to get in with any other games at this time. Yeah,
What's a game cafe?
it's a place where you can go and get drinks and play board games, or join a game of like Warhammer or D&D, or some of those other games. But again, a lot of times I just don't have the availability where they're playing when they're playing the game, right? So it hasn't been aligned. The stars haven't aligned for me yet, but we'll get there.
That sounds like fun. I don't think we have anything like that over here, at least not where I live.
Oh
Like a
wow,
gaming
yeah,
cafe.
yeah.
Hmm.
I think we started going when I was in Fort Collins. There was a game cafe.
Hmm. Okay. I
Yeah,
do live in a small city, so that's probably why. Darn
yeah.
it. That'd be a lot of fun, though. Have you ever thought about or tried implementing gaming into any of the therapy that you do for people?
Yeah, there's actually a whole it's called Geek therapy, and it's kind of a whole subgenre of therapy at the moment. I have found that the people that I want to work with are a lot less into wanting to be in a fantasy world, and they want to be in this world and figure it out now, right? They're those kind of people. I think it's really, really helpful for people who have social anxiety, who don't feel like they fit into this world, right? It gives you a way to play out those desires and talk to people and find out who you are in a way that's safe, because it's not about you, it's about your character, right? So I think it's really powerful for a lot of people. It hasn't come up for me yet for the people that I work with.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be a fun thing to try. Like maybe
Yeah.
run like a mini gaming campaign for someone, like just individual player to like help them build their confidence or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people do that. There are quite a few people now who also do like TTRPGs for the workplace. So helping people figure out how to be in the office, or work out issues through TTRPGs. So yeah, I mean it's getting big now. So it'll be part of the future, I think.
Well, that'd be a lot more interesting than the usual meetings they have at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Liz, what kind of board games do you like?
Oh gosh. Sorry, I'm looking. I have a whole shelf of them over here. So
Oh, okay.
I think we played. before COVID, we played a lot of Pandemic, and we just haven't touched it since, which is a little bit sad, but also, understandable, I think. Catan is, a go-to always, especially for people who are new to board games. Bringing out the Catan makes it easy for them to learn. Ticket to Ride is one that we play quite often, and yeah, we just Secret Hitler. That's a good one.
So I actually have those first three games that you mentioned. I've
Oh,
Pandemic,
nice.
Catan, and the Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Um, we actually have we don't have Catan, but we have Star Trek Catan.
Oh, nice. Oh, that would be cool. I wanna see that. We also play Munchkin quite a lot. I don't know if you've heard of Munchkin.
I heard of it, but never played it.
It's like D&D but with cards, and it doesn't take itself seriously at all, so it's really fun.
The only problem with games is there's just not enough time in the day to play all of them.
I know. Yeah. Trying to fit that in can be difficult.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that you also like to do some fantasy reading.
Yeah. When I was in 4th grade, I read The Hobbit, and ever since then, it's just been most of my, for fun reading has been fantasy. So things like Lord of the Rings. I also really enjoy the Kushiel series by Jacqueline Carey. Um, Dune, obviously, that's been popular recently. Um, there's just so many series that I've read that are fantasy that I can't even remember all of them.
Have you ever thought about writing your own book?
I have thought about it, but again, it's not. I don't know. Poetry. I'm into like more of the short form stuff. I write. I also write. I write flash fiction, so that's something that I like to do, and I do fantasy flash fiction, and I've published a couple of stories, so that's good. But it's not really my main focus. It's just something that I do on the side for fun, or for my own well being, journaling and therapeutic writing.
Right, right. Liz, do you remember what year it was when you first got into um, like the transformational coaching and that's like helping people out?
So that started in 2015 when I moved overseas to Jordan. So I moved overseas. I didn't have, it was for my partner's job. So I didn't have a job. And I was doing a little bit of counseling and a little bit of coaching sort of on the side. And then I started doing international school counseling and got into that. But I continued to do the coaching on the side and a little bit of the private practice therapy. So I've been doing that. It's 2015, so almost 10 years now.
Would you say that there's any difference between now and then as far as like the types of issues that people come to you with? Or is it all pretty much been the same?
I mean, I think now a lot more people have a lot of anxiety and trauma from COVID, right? So there's a lot more just that anxiety about the world now than there was even in 2015. I mean, 2015 was for Americans kind of a crazy year with, the election with Trump, but yeah, I've been seeing a lot more of that trauma and the issues with anxiety and what am I going to do with my future than I did before.
Would you have any advice for people on what they can do to kind of take care of themselves and take care of their mental health?
Mm-hmm. I would say the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is find something like yoga. And the reason I say yoga is because the research shows that it's one of the most effective interventions for mental health that we have ever found. It helps move your body, which is, good for us. We know that exercise is helpful. It brings you in a mindful state of mind. It makes you breathe, which is really, really good for stress. And it can be a really great way to practice spirituality if that's something that you want in your life, right? I think for some people, they find that spirituality is necessary for them, and it doesn't have to be, the yogic or Hindu philosophy. You can practice yoga and be a Christian or be Jewish or be, have Islamic faith. So it's a really good mixture of all of the things that you need for well-being. So that's why I'm a yoga therapist. I really believe in it. I believe that, like the research shows, it has helped me immensely to move through some of my own trauma and get to a place where I feel comfortable in my body and comfortable in this world with who I am and what I'm doing. So I'm a true believer that if you do nothing else in your life, do a little bit of yoga 3 times a week and you'll feel so much better.
Yeah, because there is that link there between our physical well-being and our mental well-being. It's like when you work out and you feel really good afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So if more people just did exercise a little bit, got some yoga, I
Mm-hmm.
think they would slowly start to see like a general increase in their overall well-being.
Right. Yeah. And the biggest thing in stress and trauma is our nervous system, and our nervous system isn't just in our brain, right? It's in our entire body, out into our fingertips. And so if you can get your whole nervous system involved with your whole body, then you're going to have a much more effective intervention than just trying to think your way through things.
Now, is there anything, any type of therapy that you're interested in that you haven't tried yet? It's like something you might want to start doing with people in the future?
Right now, I'm not sure because I'm really diving into this world of psychedelics and psychedelic integration. It's been 4 or 5 years for me where I dabbled a little bit. I had a couple of clients that were doing it. And then I went into my PsyD and I did my whole thesis on psychedelic assisted therapy and integration. And now I've dived into that. So I think I'm going to focus there for a little bit. And then maybe in the future, something new will pop up that complements everything else that I do. And I'll want to dive into that.
Okay. Do you have any like big projects you're working on, um, like in the psychedelic field, or anything else?
I don't have any big projects that I'm working on, but I do have a program that I'm rolling out. It's called the Shift program, and it's just 4 preparation sessions and 6 integration sessions in sort of a program package that kind of came about because of my research in my thesis on psychedelic integration and the effectiveness of how to do that. And I'm really excited about it because it's a little bit different than what is out there now. And I'm hoping that it can be really helpful for people to really get a nice, good preparation, solid foundation for their trip, and then have that support and that integration afterwards so that we can, keep that benefit for them as long as possible.
Liz, your website is innerevolutioncoach.com. Is
Yep.
that where people can go to learn more about this?
Yeah, you can go there or you can find me. I'm mostly on LinkedIn these days, so at Inner Evolution Coaching on LinkedIn. And I'll respond to DMs. I'm active. If you have any questions, I'm always willing to help.
Okay, so you're not on like any of the big social media ones like Twitter or Facebook?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but I don't know. I I don't find that I resonate with them as much. LinkedIn has been people have been really kind to me there. I haven't felt like pressured to buy stuff as much. I feel like, and it's a much more collegiate feeling for me. So, but I will if you DM me on Instagram or on Facebook, I'll also respond to you there. So
Okay, well, social media can be pretty draining, I think, and not always the best thing for a person's mental health.
yeah, no, the thing that I like to tell people is they took gambling addiction and they researched that and then they decided that that should be social media. So if you wouldn't want to have a gambling addiction, you probably don't want to be addicted to social media either. It's the way that they used our psychology against us with social media was genius and horrible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Liz, thank you so much for coming on the show. I do appreciate it,
Yeah,
and maybe we can chat again sometime.
yeah, that'd be great. I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Liz Shuler, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and you can also search for me on YouTube. As you may have noticed, I'm starting to do more video episodes. So hope everyone's enjoying those, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.